Hot summer air drifted over Burrard Inlet, thick with the smell of salt and creosote from the docks. But Aya Redfern could still pick out the sharper, living scent of western red cedar. She stood on the platform at Waterfront Station, tablet pressed to her chest, eyes half shut as she listened. The SkyTrain hummed overhead, its electric motors carrying commuters home, but underneath the urban pulse, Aya heard another rhythm, a low, wood-toned drumming, travelling through the buried fibre lines that linked the city to the coast mountains. Those fibres weren't silicon, they were lignin filaments grown inside carved totem poles. And tonight, their song was off-key. 127 poles formed the network, stretching from Stanley Park to Capilano Canyon, each hollowed and inlaid with braided cedar root to act as bio-optic cable. Forest spirits called them what you wished. Aya's grandmother called them SJ Gaia. The unseen ones translated wind, rainfall, and animal migration into data that fed the metro's adaptive routing algorithms. If salmon surged up the Capilano River ahead of the August moon, trains ran more frequently to East Van so elders could reach the markets first. If owls nested near Burnaby Mountain, the system dimmed lights to ease their hunt. High-tech to outsiders, to Aya, it was simply reciprocity made tangible. Tonight, reciprocity was cracking like dry bark. Packet loss spiked across 3 nodes. Routers flashed amber, and the spirit's song staggered into Aya's dashboard scrolled a repeating warning, signal overridden, source unknown. The timestamp pointed to 1847, the precise moment sunset lit the Stanley Park seawall crimson. Aya jogged toward the park, crossing Georgia Street beneath the neon wail of the Marine Building. As she neared Brockton Point, the cedar scent deepened, mixed with aerosol propellant and ozone. A crowd stood a cautious distance from the famous row of totems, phones aloft, lenses glowing. Someone had vandalized the Eagle Bear pole, not the usual tourist scratches. This was a mural, etched in ultraviolet paint, visible only under the violet haze of cheap blacklight light LEDs taped to a nearby lamppost. The tag read, "Decode Me," in jagged glyphs that pulsed like corrupted QR codes. Motifs of circuit traces and salmon scales spiraled together, breaking the carved figure's symmetry. Aya slipped through the bystanders, scanning. Her tablet confirmed what her gut reported. The pole wasn't just painted, it had been rooted. Microscopic polymer tendrils inside the pigment had fused with the lignin fibre lines, injecting malware straight into the cedar's living memory. Whoever did this hadn't merely committed graffiti. They'd dropped a 0-day into the spirit network. A pop of flash revealed a lanky man on a longboard, black hoodie flapping, camera strapped to his chest. He paused just long enough to record the uproar, then pushed off toward Cole Harbour. Aya caught sight of the sigil on the board's underside, a stylized bear claw split by a pixelated glitch. "Glitch claw," she whispered. She'd seen that handle on darknet chat logs when she audited the city's cultural archives last winter, a street artist rumoured to embed AR exploits inside murals. But no one had tied him to the poles until now. Her earpiece chirped. "Operations to Redfern. Granville line reporting phantom load. Rolling stock thinks it's climbing a gradient that isn't there. Trains overheating. Phantom load." The spirit's data told the metro the earth was rising, so motors strained against absent hills. Aya pictured the pain of metal machines forced to fight gravity that their own sensors invented. An urban allegory for colonized stories, grandmother would say. She knelt by the defaced pole, laid palm on its bark. Under the ultraviolet dazzle, she felt vibration like a clogged throat. "I hear you," she murmured, in Hainian licks knee dead Q dead la C. Though she spoke the language awkwardly. "I'll clear the way." Back at HQ beneath Stadium Chinatown Station, Aya loaded the vandalized code into a sandbox. Streams of cedar grain fractals whirlpooled on her screens. The intrusion wasn't pure sabotage. It rearranged spirit data into a different syntax, a kind of polyphonic call and responser. Each network packet contained glyphs of claws and feathers, as if the new speaker demanded the right to narrate. Aya traced the author's signature, a cascade of probability knots that coalesced into the word unmake. Before she could draft a patch, the floor trembled, lights flickered, monitors blanked, the ceiling speakers coughed up a deep, bassy rumble. No, not speakers. Something above street level was roaring through raw wooden lungs. Aya sprinted topside. Georgia Street swarmed with frightened pedestrians. Where traffic usually crawled beside coffee shops and high-rise glass, a cedar lighthouse walked. That's the only phrase Aya's brain conjured, a cedar lighthouse with legs. It stood 4 meters high, humanoid but roughly carved. Slats of red-brown heartwood interleaving like muscle, street lamps bent as if bowing. A second golem emerged from an alley, its torso made of reclaimed telephone poles still strung with dead copper. Each step thudded vibration into Aya's ribs. People fled, yet the wooden giant seemed puzzled more than violent, blind tourists trapped in foreign geometry. The first golem bent toward the pavement, fingertips brushing asphalt. Chips flew, forming swirling patterns like salmon scales. It was writing on the street, scrawling cedar groans that only the spirit network could pass. Forest scripts unleashed in concrete territory, Aya muttered. She realized the new packets she'd analyzed weren't malware but conjuration instructions. Glitch Claw had taught the poles to dream bodies into being. Sirens wailed. VPD cruisers approached, loudspeakers ordering civilians back. Aya knew bullets would ricochet and fire might only anger cedar, sacred to moisture and rot-resistant for centuries. She waved her Metro ID, flashed her status as liaison to Indigenous Tech Council, and ducked the cordon. Close up, the cedar golem radiated temperature like living trees at dawn cool, fragrant, breathing. Its carved eyes were knotholes through which green light flickered. Aya sang the simplest lullaby her grandmother taught her, a cradle song, older than any totem. The golem paused. Green sparks slowed inside its chest. She repeated the tune in binary over, NFC phone pressed to a splintered knee. Response latency dropped. The creature tried to kneel, but its mass crunched a bike rack, sparking tension. Nearby officers lifted rifles. "Stand down," Aya shouted. She broadcast her cradle song on police bands. Some listened, others didn't. A rifle clicked off safety. Cedar shoulders tightened. A sudden whistle sliced the air like skateboard wheels on fresh grip tape. Glitch Claw vaulted the police barrier, hoodie shimmering with electroluminescent veins. He held a can of paint whose nozzle glowed emerald. "They won't understand you," he called to Aya, voice regretful, almost tender. "The city only hears money talk." "You scrambled the network," Aya accused. "What did you expect to happen?" "I expected conversation." He gestured at the golems. "This is response. They're telling Metropolitan Steel to back off." Another tremor. A third golem hoisted itself from the Canada Place promenade, hull patched with driftwood barnacles. It trumpeted, a foghorn pitched through cedar throat. Glitch Claw addressed Aya directly. "You can translate. Help me breach the grid so they can finish speaking." "Finish? They're lost in translation. You gave them grammar but no map." She pointed at the churning traffic chaos. "People will get heard." The artist's eyes softened. "Then let's give them a map." An idea surfaced. Reroute the pole's bandwidth, overlay a guidance track back to forest soil. But to patch live nodes while giant cedar manifestations stomped downtown required proximity to the prime hub, a buried switch beneath the old interurban roundhouse in Yellowtown, now a heritage museum. Aya knew its maintenance tunnels. Glitchclaw claimed he could paint code faster than she could type. They struck a fragile truce, sprinting south while police corralled the bewildered wooden titans along controlled avenues. Inside the roundhouse basement, legacy brick walls sweated mineral tears. The totemic backbone rose through the floor like frozen smoke. A single spindle carved with raven and moon, encased in acrylic to satisfy preservationists. Aya unlocked the service panel, revealing living cedar roots threading into muttering soil. LEDs blinked like dew. "Do your thing," she told the hacker, plugging her tablet into a mycelial jack. She siphoned live telemetry. Golems broadcast coordinates in cedar-centered datagrams, searching for home forest. Yet GPS tagged them as already there. They stood amid skyscrapers grown from old-growth profit. No wonder they wandered. Glitchclaw unpacked aerosol cans whose paint shimmered with carbon nanotubes and spores genetically edited to transmit Wi-Fi at bacteria-scale frequencies. He sprayed sweeping strokes across the acrylic casing, abstract shapes, inspired by Pacific Northwest formline but pixelated, each curve a logic gate. Sensors interpreted the mural as executable code and loaded it straight into memory. Aya overlaid her grandmother's lullaby translated into JSON. She mapped a route from current coordinates to Capilano Canyon, the city's nearest tract of meaningful forest still touched by SG Gaia LL. She embedded variables for quiet waterways, cool shadows, salmon smell, landmarks spirits would recognize even after centuries of logging. The network accepted the patch. Checksum passed. Above, a chorus of whale-like moans rolled through concrete. Aya peeked out a service door. The cedar golems pivoted, box shoulders turning toward Coal Harbour. They began walking north-northwest in a column, obedient to intangible trail markers now pulsing like breadcrumbs only they could sense. Police and media drones followed, but the golems ignored the clamour. Night had settled. Crickets singing electrical backbeat. Across Lionsgate Bridge, traffic halted as lumbering figures approached. Steel cables thrummed under unexpected loads but held. Drivers abandoned vehicles to film the procession, social feeds exploding. Aya and Glitchclaw tailed the giants on electric bikes borrowed from a docked share. The artist kept adjusting a handheld projector, plotting emojis of salmon and cedar leaves into the sky as reassuring R overlay. At the Capilano Suspension Bridge Park, the gates stood locked. Yet Sydney Giants required no keys. They disassembled the chain link gently, almost apologetically, and entered the canyon. Ferns brushed their knees. A silence settled that city lights could not penetrate. Here old stumps, 10 men wide, slept beneath second-growth hemlock. Here river sounds remembered glacial tongues. The lead golem waded into the shallows, water kissing carved ankles, its chest split open. Not violent, more like a cedar cone releasing seeds. Inside glowed mycelium lace, woven with LED-looking spores. With one breathless shake, the creature scattered this luminescent pollen upstream. The other golems copied the motion. Light swirled through mist, settling on nurse logs, staining them with constellations. Then the giants went still. Joints cricked. Spread powder. Genovese unsick, their torsos softened, delaminating back into raw planks and bark, collapsing gently like tents after festival dawn. In minutes, the golems were heaps of cedar shards, each piece already rooting where it landed. New saplings poked through bark slivers, preternaturally accelerated as if the pollen contained temporal loopholes. Aya watched, tears catching her by surprise. The forest had reclaimed its voice and chosen growth over battle. She sensed grandmother smiling somewhere beyond language. Beside her, Glitchclaw exhaled. I thought they'd smash the city. Turns out they just wanted to go home. Aya wiped cheeks with sleeve. Spirits rarely want to erase. They want to be acknowledged. Headlights slashed the path. A convoy of city officials arrived, drones buzzing overhead projecting liability queries. A stern councillor strode up. Who authorized this biohazard event? Aya stepped forward. I did, she lied, or half-lied. She flashed her metro badge. Emergency reroute to prevent civilian casualties. Environmental impact. She gestured at nascent saplings, glowing faint jade, is obviously positive. The councillor gaped at the phenomenon of seedlings rooting in gravel. Legal teams whispered. Aya overrode them with firm calm. Take your time debating. The forest already voted. Glitch Claw quietly began painting the chain-link fence they'd dismantled, each stroke encoding an archival ledger of Cedar's sacrifices since the first sawmill on Burrard Inlet. The paint dried into transparency visible only under certain polarization angles. City staff overlooked him. Aya did not. She realized the man channeled anger the way mycelium decomposed stumps, breaking down rot to recycle nutrients. Dangerous, yes, but essential. Dawn colored the canyon pale gold. The saplings hardened into juvenile trees inches taller than Aya. Impossible by scientific metrics, yet there they stood, drinking sunrise. Birds hopped among branches, singing new tunes that mingled modem chirps with chickadee chatter. On the bikeway outside the park, Aya handed Glitch Claw a plain cedar disc carved with an abstract raven. Authentication token, she explained. Spirits approve your route access conditional. Use it wrong again, and they'll revoke. He cradled the disc like a baby turtle. I never wanted harm. I know, Aya said, but chest beating gets everyone deaf. Next time, start with conversation. He grinned sideways. Coffee and protocol review? You're buying. Months passed. People told urban legends about that July night. Living totems teaching city planners humility, skateboard prophets who stole data from trees. Official reports blamed rogue wetware art installation and filed it under Civil Emergency Classification Grey B. Yet the metro ran smoother than ever. Eve of autumn equinox, salmon counts peaked, trains syncopated to tides without Aya lifting a finger. The poles in Stanley Park bore no ultraviolet graffiti. The city coated them with smart varnish to deflect malicious code. Yet at Aya's suggestion, they left one small band of uncoated cedar slick around the Eagle Bear pole, a sanctioned space for conversation between aerosol dreams and bone-carved memories. Every week, technicians recorded new glyphs, some by children mimicking ravens, others by unseen hands at 3 a.m. The totem net now welcomed plural voices, each hashed against the cedar token Aya kept on a land Glitch Claw. Real name Rowan Malik, took a fellowship with the Museum of Anthropology to explore decolonized cybernamics. He still bombed walls under moonlight, but now he left a QR path to context and consent forms. Aya teased him that bureaucracy had tamed him. He replied the forest had merely taught him to prune. On a grey November afternoon, Aya hiked into Capilano Canyon, alone save for drizzle and the earthy perfume of humus. She knelt by one sapling grown from the golem's heartwood. It stood her height now, boughs glossy, breathing mist. She placed her tablet against its trunk. Data flowed. Moisture graphs, owl migration updates, songs of tributary rocks. Yet between those packets she sensed something subtler, an undertow of cedar laughter. The spirits remembering how two humans, one chanteur, one vandal, bridged languages. Aya pressed forehead to bark. We're listening, she promised, and across the metro, from Gastown alleys to Surrey switchyards, trains sang back in the key of cedar, rhythmic and alive, while on concrete walls new murals bloomed like moss after rain, telling the next story in a cycle Vancouver would never again dare to silence.